All right, welcome everyone to Cerius's Leadership IQ series. If you've attended one of these events in the past, welcome back. If you're new here, we're glad that you're here. Simply put, here at Cerius, we build leadership teams for companies large and small in all industries all over the world. We're able to deliver on that promise based on the executives that we have in our network. These are the results-oriented, people-focused leaders that you want in your company. If you are one of those executives, that a value statement makes sense to you and you align with that, there's an entire ecosystem for you here at Cerius to become an even better leader. We have an executive resource page. We're going to drop the link to that in the chat box below. That gives you a number of the resources that you see on your screen here to just hone your skills, align with what you do best. That way you can do that on repeat and just really articulate what you're better at than anyone else on the planet. We also give you the opportunity on calls like this to learn from other executives in the network and to meet people because life's always done better together. If you own or run a business, there's an entire ecosystem for you that we support here at Cerius. I could talk about this for the next 22 minutes, but I'm a little biased as to how we help clients. So there's a link in the chat box for what our clients actually say. It's better if you hear it from them than it is if you hear it from me. She's a subject matter expert in all things AI, which is one of the most requested topics that we get around this. Karrie Sullivan, it's good to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
So, Karrie, we're going to talk today about understanding AI, how to use tomorrow's technology to help your business today. So just right off the bat, let us know, how quickly are the robots coming for us and how long do we have left?
It's a really great question. What are you doing 2 weeks from now? Do you have anything on your calendar? You good?
I do. Can I clear it, though? That'd be great.
It's probably a good idea. The bots aren't coming for our jobs, I promise. They will change our jobs for sure.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that this call is filled with results drivers. And that means that we're probably in a pretty good spot to help our clients and companies adapt.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue because there is a part of this conversation that building up to this point when these things were just on idea boards and just kind of, you would hear about them, it sounded scary, right? We kind of thought, I know a number of years ago, that AI would eliminate all blue collar jobs in the country, right? There'd be no more manufacturing plants. There'd be no more over the road truck drivers. But some of these early things that we're seeing with this technology, I think, are kind of more white collar than we might have originally expected, right? And if you're a small business owner today, what are just some real practical first steps that you can take to kind of dip your toe in the water, right? Not turn your complete business over to machine learning, but just some real practical, let's just ease into the conversation. Let's ease into the technology. As a small business owner, how are you using AI to kind of automate some steps and processes for you?
I think that's a good place to start. And I'd preface it with, I'm not a PhD. I'm not a data scientist. I'm a translator. So I work with a lot of data scientists and I work with a lot of technologists. And I've just built a capability around translating what business needs into IT. So from a small business perspective, I am one of those small businesses. So I made a conscious decision as a single shingle, starting out in 2016, to not hire bookkeepers and back office and things like that. I decided to eat my own dog food. And the idea was that I would knit together any of the finance tools, accounting tools, bookkeeping tools, and things like that using robotic process automation and the automations that were built within those tools. So that now, based on my historical data and things like that, I'm now in the position where I'm able to get some predictive information about my revenue, cash flow, and things like that, on top of not really having to do a lot of data entry.
Yeah. So I think you going into it, being a leader in this space, having helped customers and clients, kind of beforehand, you started your own business through consulting. You kind of went into it with that intentionality, right? I'm not going to hire a
I
lot of
did.
staff in back office. Let's just say that someone on the call today is running a business. They got 10, 12 employees. They're already here, right? They already have some of
Right.
these back office functions. How might they start to think about using some of this technology, not necessarily initially to replace people, but to help them do their job better, faster? Walk us through that.
Of course. So, um, I would, like Chris said, not think about it in terms of just replacing people, because 10 to 1, most of the companies that we're working for or with, or own, we don't have enough resources to get things done already between talent shortages and things like that. I typically tend to think about it in two ways. Number one, it's about the roles and responsibilities and the org chart. So wherever you've got an open spot in an org chart, or where you're thinking about adding a spot in an org chart, that may be a good place to start. So just starting there simply. The second place I look is in, especially if we've got manufacturers and folks on the call that are like lean certified and similar. Start with the processes. Think about the processes that are broken, that are disjointed, where you've got silos that are starting to build as you've gone through different growth stages, and start to attack the broken, but do it not with just throwing bodies at it, but thinking about it in terms of how do you improve the process, how do you use some technology to do some automation, and that the org chart implications that it'd have. Does that make sense?
No, that's great. I think, yeah, a personal example from our own company, we recently had a very arduous process for contracts, right? A
Mm,
lot of copy
it's
and
a great one.
paste, just
It's a
just a
great one.
lot of just a lot of let's go. We had someone that was doing that. It was about 20, 25 hours a week. And no one loved that job, right? No one loved doing that job. No one loved managing that processor system. We would get all the way up to being able to help a client and be like, oh, now we got to do this contract thing, right? Through software automation, through some really integrated tools that probably didn't exist 36 months ago, we were able to reduce that 20 hours down to about 30 minutes a week, which then gave that person, like, it took something off of their job that they really didn't enjoy doing in the first place, right? Is that a great
That's right.
place for us to
It's a
start
great
as business
place.
leaders?
It's a great place to start. And part of the reason I like starting there is that if you start using tools like that just to manage your contracts and some of those long form documents, then you can use similar tools to analyze those documents later, make sure that you've got the contract terms out of them, and similarly that you can automate your invoicing from there. That's part of what I do, right? You can start to cut additional steps out of the process later, that or any processes that are associated with that contract, especially the administrative ones, especially the ones that are low value, and especially the ones that are just really, really repeatable.
Yeah. So probably a lot of senior leaders on the call today, and then ones that will watch it later. Sometimes we don't even know those processes, right? The company is kind of big. We just know that we sell things and there are contracts, or there are invoicing, or there are other back office functions. How would a senior leader within a department, or maybe a small company president who had handed this stuff off years ago, they know that it gets
Yeah.
done, how would they approach even knowing kind of what direction to go and where to look?
I struggle with this one almost every day, because I remember what it was like to be a marketer, but now that I am running a business and trying to scale it and trying to think about how to build a marketing campaign, it all of a sudden became foreign. Um, yeah, as senior leaders, it's easy to forget where you came from, even if you sat in a whole bunch of seats as you were coming up. So um, the other tricky part of this is that a lot of the folks that are doing those jobs right now are concerned that AI is coming for their job. So we've got to have that conversation, but it's got to be handled with care, and it's got to be prefaced with, I'm not here to eliminate you. I find value in you, and I would like you to focus on things that are a lot more important than some of the lower value things that I know you get stuck doing, right? And so if we start to position it that way with the employee, then the ask becomes a lot easier. You'd be surprised at what people will come up with if you simply ask them, help them understand that their job isn't at risk, but simply ask them what parts of their job are super painful. It has to happen over and over again. And it just doesn't add as much value as the things that they really could be getting to if they had that extra 10, 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
So ask simple questions. What would give you 15 hours a week back? And then start from there. And that gives you a list. That automatically gives you a list.
Yeah. I think it also gives you a list, Karrie. In addition, how much does that free up just the relief of the worker to know that those 15 hours of copy and pasting contracts or moving invoices from one system to the other is now
Swivel
off
chairs.
the plate?
Yeah,
That's
it's huge. It's really huge. And if you approach it the right way, and they trust you as you go through that first implementation or two, then it actually makes the culture better, because they start to realize, or it dawns on them, that you're not coming for the job, you're coming for the low value. You don't want to spend that human time on the things that don't matter quite as much. You find value in what they can do, or how they might interact with a client, so that the human's focusing on what humans do really, really well. Expense reports, nah, who wants? Forget the expense report.
right.
Moving on.
No, just make sure it gets paid, right? As long as it gets paid.
Exactly. As long as it gets paid. Hit the bank account and move on.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So you had mentioned that you really are a translator from what companies have problems with to the IT solutions that can help solve them. Isn't there also maybe some translation that can be done within the company about how we talk about AI and doing these things? Have you had any tips or tricks about, there's that individual conversation with the employee on what part of your job would you prefer not to do, what seems to be repetitive, but across teams and organization, how do we kind of spur that creativity?
There's a few things. So spurring creativity, even I do a lot of change management. I end up doing a lot of change management and transformation. So it doesn't matter the size of the company and what they're going through, whether it's modernization growth or just straight rip and replace and operating model transformation. There's always going to be some fear, and there's going to be a lot of need to manage the humans and the politics behind it. So when we think about how to help those people move forward, the best thing that I've found is, number one, just to involve them. So I actually hire UX designers as change managers, partially because I really like the UX and design thinking approach for change management, especially as we're trying to get ideas out of people. Because if you facilitate the process in that way, even if it's just abbreviated, it just does a really nice job of getting those stakeholders on board and teasing out the things that are truly valuable in what they do, how they do it, and what drives value for customers. The other thing I'd suggest there is that I actually use AI to facilitate change management. And we talked about this a little bit before, where we are now able to use AI to collect language from a LinkedIn profile and then map it to trait-based psychology. And when we do that, we can essentially assess, do like a Hogan assessment or a Myers-Briggs assessment on an entire organization in about an hour, or even on a department in about an hour. And we can do that. It cuts out a lot of steps in trying to figure out who's going to feel the most fear from that change. And when you can identify the fear and do that really quickly, and when you can identify the results drivers that are buried inside the organization and do that quickly, you almost automatically have a process for not just how to generate the ideas. You know who to go to, who's going to be able to polish that diamond in the rough, and who's going to be able to write the playbook for the folks that are going to be resistant or reluctant to change.
A lot to unpack there. So let's kind of transition.
Sorry.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. No, that's great. It sets us up perfectly. So small companies using AI to kind of save, give people back their day, right? And really kind of automate some stuff that, for the most part, people probably didn't love. There may be that one person that loves expense reports, right? But that's probably not
yet.
Most of us. I haven't met them either. But there may be one. So when we're talking about change management, right, we're talking about introducing this idea of, as opposed to just adding people to an org chart, let's see what efficiencies, what creativity, what we can do within the organization by using technology so that humans can do the thing that they're best at. A lot of us may have some ideas on, I've got 100 employees. I know these 50 are going to love this. They're probably been waiting for it. I've got these 20 that maybe are going to be resistant. And I got these 10 that are going to really, they're probably not going to make it through the transition. To be honest, a lot of that's guessing up front, right? We're just like, oh, I know these people and they're going to love it. They're for us. They're for what we're doing. There's no way they're going to resist. Talk about how you've used AI to kind of validate that data or invalidate that data to make it more than just guesses. Because as our organizations get bigger, we don't know everyone who's going to resist the change, right? Whatever that change is, whether it's a market change, whether it's technology change, the larger organization gets, the harder that is. So you, in your work with our clients, have really found a kind of a niche within AI, right? To kind of have it help validate, invalidate data to really give us clarity on our organization and who's going to be the roadblocks there. So kind of talk us through how that works and how companies are using it to almost before the change happens, just be better informed about their organization.
So I'll use it in a couple of ways. For companies that are small, say smaller than 50, we'll use this kind of technology for hiring, especially as we're trying to maintain culture and find more results drivers, because that's really what it's good at, is helping to find those folks and then match them to the culture of the organization, so that it makes that shift a bit more seamless. And create less friction, right? Once you get to that 50 to 150 person mark, that's when leaders really start to lose the connection at the deepest parts of the organization, and that's where it gets challenging, because you have to both grow a company and generate revenue, but you also have to focus heavily on operational excellence, right? And that operational excellence combined with revenue growth and cost containment, it is a difficult thing to do as you're going through those growth stages fast. So that's often how we start to think about it. It's, what are we trying to achieve? Number one, what team do we have to achieve it? And what kinds of people do we need to supplement that team to make it go really, really well? And so as we assess the organization, we're looking for any concerns with a leadership team. So number one, not everybody's going to be comfortable with those next level of change. And then number two, if you don't have folks or not everyone on the leadership team is comfortable with change, where do you find them inside the organization? So you're not hiring big consulting firms and things like that to try and get some of that day-to-day growth done. So that's essentially what we're doing. We're finding and identifying very quickly who we think are four profiles: results drivers, resilient, reluctant, resistant. And most companies, when they think about change management or growth, are going to focus on that resistant. And I suggest that you do the opposite. you take the air out of resistance by focusing on the results drivers and the resilient, and giving them jobs to do, so that the work that they do up front is feeds into how we help the reluctant folks adopt and adapt to the change later on and make their transition smoother. So just to break that down one more little bit. Your results drivers are the folks that are going to jump into change wearing a gasoline suit with both feet. The resilient folks are going to be a fast follow. They're not going to jump in with both feet wearing the gasoline suit, but if with a framework and some guidance, they're pretty good, right? And then we leverage those first two groups to work out all the bugs, get through the pilots, do a couple of the new things in smaller scale. And we ask them to write the playbook for the folks that tend to be more reluctant for change. And that's a lot of people. So your results drivers are only going to be 10%. It's actually about 8% of the population, and that's it. The next generation or next crew of resilient folks is maybe 30% of any organization, less if you tend to be in financial services or folks like that. The reluctant folks are almost the remainder. You've got about 60% of the population that's going to be reluctant, and it's going to be focused on fear, shame, anger, doubt, guilt, things like that they've got kind of in here, and it's difficult for them to get over. So their fear is usually around ambiguity. And what we're trying to do in that process that I just outlined is wring out as much ambiguity for them as possible in the change, so that what we're doing is replacing their day-to-day playbook. Otherwise, if you just give them something new to do, they're just going to add it to their checklist, and it creates more work for them and frustration. This way, we're polishing it up, making the change work, make them confident in it, and then let their peers write that playbook for them, so that they feel much more comfortable with dealing with something that they might be uncertain about.
So let's give some examples here, because I know a lot of times our clients will come to us, and this is kind of where we engage you, Karrie. They never come before change management. They usually don't come to us in the planning stage. They come to us somewhere along the failed execution stage, right? Which is, we try to implement a CRM, right? Or we try to do this new ERP, or we try to, offshore, inshore, like just whatever the change management thing is. It was going well. Then it stopped going well. Now we wish we had a time machine and we could just redo the whole thing, right? That's usually where our clients are when they engage with us. We consult with you on these projects. Walk me through a little bit of just how important it is to do this project, whether you're before change management, in the middle of it, at the end of it and regretting it, of identifying people into those four. Having done this a number of times,
yes,
I think if I had this tool 10 years ago, right, the mistakes I would have never made, right? Because when I've done change management in the past, your big company rollout, right? Hey, everybody, here's an hour-long meeting. We're going to show you how cool the new thing is. We're going to give you the philosophy behind it. Everyone ready? Go. But as you mentioned, people aren't the same. People don't adopt things and see change differently or the same way. So walk us through some of the clients that you've helped, how much of a relief it was to identify these different groups and how that informed their strategy moving forward now that they had this data.
So we bake it in. I bake it in right from the beginning. So part of the reason that I focus on overall transformation and transformation management offices and things like that is that it's hand in glove with that program management or that post-merger integration or things like that. Heck, it's even people due diligence prior to an acquisition, so you know who people are and how to work with them as you're going through the negotiation. So the earlier the better in those cases, because you can predict how people are going to behave and you can predict how people are going to make decisions. So as soon as you can figure out where that fear is going to come from and who your advocates really, really are, you can start down the process of including them in the design you can include them in the upfront requirements gathering, so that even if the strategy is already defined, the people that will be impacted the most have a voice and have some agency in how it rolls out. So, for example, when I work with, I'll just take a large company. So, large company, big sales and distribution company, and they're going through digital transformation. And for the first part of that digital transformation is in the IT organization. As they're going through the IT organization and changing the moving the deck chairs around, roles, responsibilities, teams, things like that. At first, they were flying blind. They didn't necessarily know who was who. They swapped out the entire leadership team. As we started to apply data to people and psychology, we were really able to be much more focused and save a lot of time on the folks that weren't going to adopt, and focus a lot more time on the people that were, because what we're trying to do in those cases is manage energy. When we manage the energy in those changes and we keep things moving, you don't get stuck behind inertia, and that's really your core. So what it's doing is, in that case, it cut the meeting time, the prep time, the communication time down, so that we weren't necessarily just doing one big meeting, communicate, train, roll, and then having to retrain and retrain and retrain and retrain, or it gets watered down or it fails. Instead, we were focused and laser focused on the materials, the communication, the training, and the attention that each one of those groups needed. And we got it right the first time, so that they were engaged throughout the process. And it cut the typical kind of adoption cycle from, say, 18 months. And this took like 8. So it was a lot faster once people really started to take the fear out of it that came along with the ambiguity of the new process or the new way of working, which were both issues, but then also knowing that their job wasn't at risk too.
So you kind of met people where they were and walked them through side by side, but in a group volume situation.
That's right.
Yeah. So Karrie, so much work goes into planning and implementing change management, regardless of what it is. Talk me through just the speed at which you're able to help run these studies, get these people into the groups, and then help the communication plans. What kind of project length are we talking about to really figure out who's in what bucket and how we start to work from there?
The analysis, the AI itself can run a 500 to 1,000 person organization in about an hour or two. And I put that in the hands of an industrial organizational psychologist that I've trained to read it and analyze the data. From that point, even as it comes out of the system, we're already matching it up to human capital or HRIS system data, and we know who they report to, we know how they roll up, we know and can aggregate by team pretty quickly. So instead of taking a month worth of interviews, it takes a couple of days. Big Fortune 500 company took us about 6 days to assess the entire company, and then another few days to do some of the analysis on it. But I think the challenge there is because you've got to go team by team to get through the big ones. But in a smaller mid-market organization, it's a very straightforward couple days worth of process, and you're not spending months or weeks.
Yeah. And you're not making mistakes by saying the wrong things to the wrong groups, which is I think maybe one of the key takeaways that our clients have raved about, just having that clarity before they launch something. Usually, which is important, about having launched something without this before, and then realizing the mistakes, realize not everyone is in the same group, and maybe the people you thought were with you weren't with you. For sure.
There, one profile specifically, we call it the guardian, and it's a very interesting one in that they are psychologically predisposed to protecting people. Something happened in they're usually really smart, They have a high EQ, and they are predisposed to protecting someone from their past, in their life, whatever it is. And they are very savvy about protecting their team. So when a change is proposed, there you get usually the really kind of rigid, methodical folks that have been doing the same job for 20 years, and they'll kind of, puff up and say, no, I'm not doing that. That's not the way we've done it. And they'll be pretty vocal about objecting to the change. The Guardian, on the other hand, is going to make it sound more like, I'm not sure that the team's going to like that quite so much. Are you sure that's what we should do? And it's low key enough that it's very empathetic, and it's likable even. So as you're trying to move fast through a modernization or an investment or an effort, they can slow you down, and they can kill the productivity of 50 to 100 people by like a lot. So I try to pinpoint those folks first. And when I do, we can intervene with some coaching, with some discussion, with some making sure that they don't get in their own way and don't get in the organization's way as well.
Karrie, I should have booked an hour for this. I think we're just getting to the really interesting part. But being up on time, I'd love to have you come back, really dig into this some more around these personas and how we can use this tool and use AI and your expertise, especially to really drill in on change management and just organizational effectiveness through that.
Love it. That'd be awesome. I'd love to do it.
Sure. Well, we'll make sure we get that on the calendar. Everyone who's watching live and also watching later, hopefully you understand AI a little better. It's not coming for our jobs. It's coming to help us do our jobs even better. Whether you're at the top of an organization or you're working in the day-to-day operations of it, a lot of different ways, from invoice back office automation, all the way to what Karrie just talked about now, which is really finding out who within a group are your champions, who we can have a specific conversation with, and how we can really articulate what increases our chances of the change that we're driving our company through, of being the best that they absolutely can. Karrie, thanks so much for your time today, and thanks for shedding some light on a really complicated topic that's going to be helpful for all of us moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Chris, and thanks to the Cerius team.
You bet. Take care, Karrie. Thanks everyone for being on the call. We'll see you again real soon.